Okay, so today's video is pretty philosophical in nature, I guess. Human beings are very strange because we want to believe in something so much because it makes you feel safer. It makes you feel like you're part of a team. It makes you feel like you're fighting towards something. And it's very strange that I think it all comes from fear. And it's the idea that it's hard for human beings to admit that they don't know anything, because that makes things seem pretty scary. You want to find something that's solid, right? You want to find something in this world that you can hang on to that's solid. We're all basically grasping at straws to find something solid. Because if you saw existence as this quantum state, this quantum reality where you're just flying through this infinity of nothingness, randomness, and then you find yourself in this solid place. Like right now, I'm in this room, and it seems so solid and safe. It's stable, solid, and it feels cozy, right? And someone does, I don't know, a deep meditation or does some psychedelics, and they fly off into the vast infinity of everything that is, and then they get freaked the fuck out because that's too much. This infinite insanity of stuff going on, right? Right now it's going on, but you don't see it, right? So where am I going with all this? Grasping at straws and is that everyone is trying to look for something to believe in. And right now the world is so insanely divided with like, what side are you on? Should you wear a mask? Should you not wear a mask? Should we be locked down further? Should we open everything up? 5G, it's going to kill us all. And you're probably wondering, well, where's all this coming from? Why are you making a video about it now? Well, it's just, I was talking to somebody the other day. I hung out with somebody, and we were going for a walk, and then they told me about stuff going on, without going into too much detail, stuff going on in their family and stuff, and how they were asking me, so how do you deal with people if like they believe in something and they keep talking to you about it and like you don't know what to say to them? This person I was talking to, they were saying that their family members keep telling them about 5G and wake up and 5G is going to kill us all, and this whole thing is a conspiracy, and Bill Gates and computer chips and controlling us and 5G, and then this person that I was talking to, you can tell that they were very overwhelmed with their family telling him all this stuff, and he didn't know how to deal with it. Again, we always want to pick a team. I love Donald Trump. I hate Donald Trump. Donald Trump is just a person, right? See, the thing is, we think we know people's intentions. We see someone on TV, we're like, that person's that person's evil. That person's got bad intentions. That person has good intentions. You rarely know someone's intentions. You rarely do. Because half the time you don't even know your own intentions. It happens so often where we do something and afterwards we look back and we think, why did I do that? What was I trying to do there? This idea that you think you can look at somebody in the TV and know their intentions and judge them as good or bad, as if like anybody is inherently good or bad, right? Or evil or angelic. These are just made up terms, right? I made a video a while back about like, I think it's called How to Properly Insult Someone. And it's such a joke on the idea that like no one's one thing. No one's good. No one's bad. We're all, the best you can do is maybe give a percentage. Like that person maybe has bad intentions or hurtful intentions 20% of the times. Or like that person's a hypocrite 10% of the times. Or that person has people's best interest at hand 90% of the time. But no one's ever one way or the other. Very rarely, right? So this is a lot to unpack in this video because it's this idea of like the basic idea of the video is that we need something to hold on. I know Donald Trump is bad. This is my side. 5G is going to kill us all. That's my side. I'm going to fight for that side. And what's crazy is that the reality is we don't know anything. You don't know anything about Donald Trump. You don't know him. You don't know his tensions. I don't know anything about 5G. I don't know anything about the reality we live in, right? We don't even our own we don't know nothing about consciousness. We don't know nothing about the reality we live in. We don't know other people's intentions, and yet we pick sides and we fight for those sides as if we know. There is no God. I'm atheist. You have to be really silly to believe in a magical universal consciousness. What are you, stupid? Of course there's a universal consciousness or God. It created everything. You're wrong. You're wrong. Right, again, because the humility in saying that I don't know and we might not know about a lot of things. It's too scary to realize that we don't even know what reality we live in on. We don't know anything. It's too frightening to think about that, right? And because it's not stable, right? Like right now, I know that I'm in this stable room and it feels cozy. It's good to know that. But it's not good to know that we also exist in some sort of crazy quantum world where everything's flying around. It's insanity, right? Because this is stable, right? And it's just easier to actually pick a side and fight for something because, like I said, something makes sense to you. I get it. Yeah, 5G, I'm onto this. 5G is going to harm us all. Or Donald Trump, man, that's a bad dude. Or I love Donald Trump. Like, it feels good to think you know something. Right? I know the secret. You know the secret, right? It's kind of like you know the secret to the universe or something. It feels like, now I get it. You know? Again, it's like having some psychedelic trip, and for that moment you think you know the answers to the universe, and you're like, oh my God, this is euphoric. But then you wake up again and what was that again? What? Wait a second. What? So the universe is, I forget. So that is the ultimate, that's the ultimate humility, to understand that we don't know much of anything. So if you don't know much of anything, how do you make sense of the world and how do you not go crazy, right? Well, that's a big part of existing, the humility in not knowing. It can definitely drive you mad, but then the other option is either have the humility in not knowing. I don't know Donald Trump's intentions. I don't know the reality I live in. I don't know what consciousness is. It's either that or you pretend like you know. Like when you hear a conspiracy theory. You know, did you know that the Anunnaki came here 200,000 years ago and enslaved the human beings? They were like an alien race from another planet. Right? You hear someone saying that, and it's like, and you're like, okay, maybe it's possible, right? Because that's really the the ultimate way I see it is kind of like be open to any possibility, but don't fight for that possibility as if it's a fact. You know, if someone talks to me about 5G, do you know that like 5G is actually harmful to you? I'm open to hear literally anything. But the idea is, you read some stuff or someone tells you something or you read something and all of a sudden you think it's a fact, right? That's a problem. Like, because if you think it's a fact, again, it's safe, it's stable. You know, if someone asked me, Tony, what do you think about 5G? Do you think it's harmful, or do you think it's not a big deal? Right? It's basically like, I can just simply be like, well, I read this article from the scientific journal and it's safe. The end of discussion. Or I could be like, well, I read these other sites and they're talking about how it's actually really bad for you. Right? Now, another mistake that people make is that are very scientifically minded is that they read something in a scientific journal or a peer-reviewed study and they're like, well, that's the answer. See, it's science. You can't argue with science. I'm smart and logical. Well, science is great, but when you're talking about the idea of science, is that it's not just this magical word science, like, oh, science has the answers and this is fact because it's science. It's the idea is like, when you want to figure out something, like, is this harmful for you? It's the idea of like, you have to figure out a test that's 100% certain. And that's very tricky sometimes, to develop a test that is 100% certain that this way we're going to do this test solves this issue with no doubt in mind, right? We've tested 5G and we're 100% certain it does not harm humans, right? Well, that's not that easy to do. So it's not like, well, science says this, you know, like, how good is that test? Because there's always testing on people for different things. Testing in general, right? It's first of all, the long-term effects on, how do you scientifically test the long-term effect of something that we haven't been exposed to long-term? How do you, it's not foolproof what I'm trying. Science is great, right? But it's not foolproof because the testing is not always foolproof, right? That's the problem, right? How do you test for something long-term when it hasn't been around long-term? So it's very easy to jump on like any side very easily and dismiss the other side. So we live in a world where, you know, this idea of, you know, like science and tests. I was actually having a conversation with someone the other day about that, about this idea of science and testing, because someone, it was a Reddit discussion, the other day. And then somebody posted on Reddit, like, why, they were confused. They were saying, like, why is it that they were like, why is the idea of aliens still really taboo, right? Because a lot of people still giggle at the idea of like aliens because it sounds like some sort of like science fiction thing, right? To me, I consider the topic of aliens the most boring, mundane discussion because there's no mystery involved in it. It's asking whether there's intelligent life out there is the most boring, uninteresting question you can possibly ask because the answer is so obvious that it's almost like ridiculous to have some sort of wonderment and mystery about it. It's just an unbelievably boring question. Just think about the question, right? Is there aliens out there or intelligent life? Do you realize the odds of us being the only intelligent life in this entire universe, the odds of that is so idiotically low and ridiculous that it is about the most unlikely thing in existence. About the only thing more unlikely is existence itself, because that's complete nonsense and irrational, right? Existence. Because that's a complete paradox, existence, having stuff. Right? But so it's not even a mystical, wondrous question. It's like, what are the odds that we're the only intelligent life in this entire universe? The odds are so small and so nonsensical. It's almost like a silly question to even ask and be wondrous about, right? Now, I understand being wondrous about it when you're 5 or when you're 9, but as an adult, if you just think about it for a couple of seconds, right? The odds of us being alone in this entire universe is so ridiculous that it's not even an interesting question. If you want to ask an interesting question, like I said, ask about the mystery of consciousness, the mystery of existence, the mystery of many things. Those are interesting. But is there life on other planets? Is that really an interesting question? And why am I asking this? Because I left a comment saying, well, it's because the reason people are still wondering about it is because we have been trained as a society, instead of using our own common sense, we have been trained to get answers from religion or science. If religion or science doesn't give us the answer, we're like, well, I don't know. What does science say? What does religion say? And we just shrug. But it's not something to shrug about, right? Because somebody left I said that the idea that it's because people don't use their own common sense. They're looking for answers from science or from religion. But you don't need to in that particular matter, because that is such a quick and common sense answer that you don't need to look for scientific proof. Because someone left a comment saying, "Oh, that's a very kind of like they're saying, well, like that's ridiculous to just like because it's like there's no you have to be scientific about it, right?" And they're like, but the thing is, there's no test, right? There's no scientific test to prove whether there's aliens out there. There's no test, right? But you know what there is? There's just common sense, right? So sometimes it's okay to just use your common sense. You don't have to look for an answer somewhere, like because we're just trained to be given answers, to be spoon-fed answers. But for some things, they're so common sense that all it takes is just a couple of seconds of thinking about it, and you realize how silly the question is, right? Are we alone in the universe? It's such a silly question. And yet, ironically, if you ask that question, somebody will either say, well, I don't know what the science say. We have no proof. And they're just kind of like, I don't know. I'm going to wait till we have an answer. But you don't really have to wait, because you just think about it for a couple of seconds. And that just shows you how we're trained to just be given answers. What does science or religion tell us? I don't know. And so we've just lost capacity to think for ourselves. And right, so back to this idea of you can't prove with science 100% whether there's intelligent life out there. There's no test. Again, the reason I mentioned that, I was long-winded, but going back to the 5G, to be like, to giggle and be like, it's been tested, it's safe. Oh, you're ridiculous. How could you possibly have a long-term test for anything if it's not a long-term test, right? So the idea is, you could look at any sort of article and be like, that's my position. I look at a scientific article and, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, they're all safe. Stop it. The science shows you that it's safe, right? And then you can look at other articles and be like, no, it's really harmful, and just pick a side and start fighting. Donald Trump is bad, it's good. And it just goes on forever. It just goes on forever. And it's like, it's crazy. It's just crazy to see how much we want to believe in something, to feel safe and secure, because you have the answer. You know the answer, right? And like I said, science can't give us the answer for everything because you can't test everything, right? Not everything is 100% perfectly testable in a way where it's like completely conclusive without any room for error. And also the idea of like, hearing that like, oh, this is bad, this is good, and just believing that too. The idea is with most things, it's hard to know, right? It's hard to know someone's intentions. It's hard to know 100% if something's harmful or not harmful unless you have a really long-term study, whether it's with, different foods, different supplements, different chemicals, different anything. It's just, and yet we pick a side and we fight for it. That's what we do. And then you have discussions with people and they're like, what do you do when your family is mocking you and making fun of you, that you need to wake up and realize how harmful this is? Or Donald Trump's on our side, can't you see Donald Trump is against us? And like, it's crazy. It's just, all of it is just nonsense to me, all of it. And I guess it's just a part of the human experience, right? But it's just, I think it all just simply comes down from fear and the idea of like, we need something to hold on to believe in because we have something to fight for. I know the answer. I know what it is, and this is it, because it makes you feel safe. But the reality is everything is just all over the place, and it's not as clear as you might think it is. And I'll leave it at that for now. So hope you're all having a good day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.